So now let's talk about Amazon S3 security. The first part is user base. So as a user, you can have IAM policies attached to you, and this IAM policy is going to authorize which API calls should be allowed for a specific IAM user. You can also have resource-based security. So this is new. We can use what's called S3 bucket policies. And they are bucket-wide rules that you can assign directly from the S3 console. And this will allow, for example, a specific user to come in or allow a user from another account, this is called cross account, to access your S3 buckets. This is also how we'll make our S3 buckets public, as I will show you in a minute. Next, you have the Object Access Control List, or ACL. They're fine-grained security, and they can be disabled. And if you want to go at the bucket level, you can have Bucket ACL, which is way less common, also can be disabled. And the most common way now to do security on an Amazon S3 bucket is to use bucket policies. So in which situation can an IAM principal can access an S3 object? Well, if the IAM permissions allow it, or if the resource policies allows it, and that there is no explicit deny in the action, then the IAM principal can access the S3 object on the specified API call. So we'll have a look at these use cases in a minute. Finally, another way to do security on Amazon S3 is to encrypt the objects using encryption keys. So what does a S3 bucket policy actually look like? Because this is the focus of S3 security for us. So they are JSON-based policies, and they look like this. So this is a JSON document, and it's quite easy to read. So the first thing is that you have a resource block, and the resource tells the policy what buckets and object this policy applies on. And here we can see that this applies to every object within the example bucket. This is what the star is for. Next, we have the effects, so allow or deny. And what do we allow or deny? Well, we deny actions. So we have a set of APIs we can either allow or deny. And in this example, the action we allow is get object. So this allows anyone, thanks to the principal. The principal represents the account or the user to apply the policy to. So principal is star. So here we allow anyone with a star to get objects, so to retrieve an object from my example bucket with a star. That means any object within it. So therefore, this S3 bucket is setting public reads on all objects inside my buckets. So we can use an S3 bucket policy to grant public access to the bucket, as the one shown on the right-hand side, or to force objects to be encrypted at upload, or to grant access to another account. So let's have a look at the situation. So here is a bucket policy for public access. So we have a user, it's on the World Wide Web, it's a website visitor, and he wants to access files within our S3 buckets. So we'll attach an S3 bucket policy that allows public access. This is the one you've seen in the previous slide. And once this bucket policy is attached to the S3 bucket, then we can access any objects within it. That's what we'll see in the hands-on. But another way to do it is that if you have a user within your account, so it's an IAM user, and that user wants to access Amazon S3, then we can assign IAM permissions to that user through a policy. And therefore, because the policy allows access to the S3 bucket, then the user can access our S3 bucket right now. If we have an EC2 instance and want to give access from the EC2 instance into the S3 buckets, we've seen that IAM users are not appropriate. We need to use IAM roles instead. So we create an EC2 instance role with the correct IAM permissions, and that EC2 instance will be able to access the Amazon S3 buckets. More advanced, if we want to allow cross-account access, then we must use a bucket policy. So we have an IAM user in another AWS account, and we create an S3 bucket policy that allows cross-account access for that specific IAM user, and therefore the IAM user will be able to make API calls into our S3 buckets. Other security settings you need to know about is that there's the bucket settings for block public access. So this is what we set to on when we created the bucket, and these settings were invented by AWS as an extra layer of security to prevent company data leaks. So even though you would set an S3 bucket policy that would make it public, if these settings are enabled, the bucket will never be public. So this is to prevent data leaks. So if you know that your bucket should never be public, then leave these settings on, and you have a level of security against people who would set the wrong S3 bucket policy. And if you know that none of your S3 buckets ever should be public, then you can set this at the account level. Okay, so that's it for S3 security. Now let's go in the hands-on to practice.